everyone, Rhiannon here with Steelhead. I am so excited to be today's host of our webinar, How to Create a Creative Brief That Will Wow and Create Alignment. We are going to get started in a couple minutes, but prior to that, I am hoping that everybody can download these two documents. This is the workbook, which we will be going over. You should have received it in an email prior to the session. And also, I will be referencing 7 books that I highly recommend that will aid in creating an event that will really turn heads. I am so thrilled to welcome you virtually to our session on how to create a creative brief that will wow and create alignment. I am the CMO of Steelhead Productions. We are an exhibit house located in Las Vegas. We design and build trade show exhibits and can service needs on a national level. I'm here today with my co-hosts. We have Tom Frisbee.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm Chief Design Officer for the organization. Been in the industry 20 plus years. New math, that means over 30. I'm thrilled to be here with an organization focused on sustainability and a new direction for the industry at large.
Excellent. And last but not least, Andrew Childers is here with us as well, who will be adding content. Andrew, you want to say a few things about yourself?
Thank you. I've been in this industry now for about 10 plus years, and I've been doing that both on the international side and here domestically in the US. I've gotten some good exposure to those that have done it really well and those that have done it not so well, so I'm looking forward to sharing what I've learned.
Excellent. We are so excited to share our expertise. We collectively have seen many exhibitors not retrieve the level of ROI that is possible. So we're hoping that after today's content, you will be well prepared to knock the socks off of any attendee at any trade show that you're going to. Thank you. So question number 1 on the creative brief outline asks why you're going to the show. Now that seems like a really simple question, but it's an opportunity to create a holistic, big picture understanding as to why you're attending. A lot of exhibitors go to different trade shows for completely different reasons. The way we like to think about it at Steelhead is by starting with the end in mind. So if you were to list out all of the different reasons why you're attending the trade show, taking into consideration the different players and the different teams who are involved in the actual success or the actual outcome. So starting with the end in mind, and then reverse engineering components that are necessary in order for the success to be met. So for instance, if you're going for brand identification and brand awareness, you're going to want your presence on the trade show floor to be magnificent, which will drive how the booth is designed. You'll want to have a very strategic graphics plan, which will put the attention on your brand front and center. You may also have to leverage some different press in order to get the brand awareness that you're looking for. So starting with the end in mind. So when you're considering what success looks like for your brand, I recommend referencing 2 books. The first book is Story Brand by Donald Miller. In this book, he talks about telling a story in order to captivate your audience. Now, there's a twist that I really appreciate. We all know that there is a hero and a guide in every story. Now, typically, we as marketers, and I can put myself right smack in the middle of the group, we would want our brand to be the hero. In the book, Building a Story Brand, it's recommended that we position all of our marketing to make the attendee, to make the prospect, the future customer, the hero, and our brand, the guide that will help the prospect, the buyer, or the new customer, will help them along the way and on their journey to their own individual success. The other piece from that book that is particularly interesting is that there are 3 types of pain that everybody feels. So one is an external pain. So for instance, if the work that they do doesn't pan out, that they fear maybe losing their job. The second is an internal pain. If the work they do doesn't turn out well, that something negative will happen to them or to their family or to the future of their career. And the last is a psychological pain. So that would mean that there is something that they think could be happening within the industry or within the economy that can affect their particular position. Now, the most powerful place to meet a prospect is in this internal point of fear or in their internal worry. And so if you can figure out for the prospect or the attendee why they're there, what they're wanting to get from it that will help alleviate their internal pain, you really have the opportunity to grasp their emotions. So my second book recommendation is Simon Sinek's Start With Why. Now, in this book, he talks about developing a North Star. So when we were talking about success and building what success looks like from starting at the end, it's essentially developing the North Star point for you and your team, holistically thinking about what success looks like so that everybody knows that there is a driver to help kind of get from point A to point B. He also talks about the parts of the brain that are triggered by understanding why something is occurring. And that will create alignment and put everybody in the mindset for achieving what ultimately is going to be the best for your company. So Simon Sinek Starts With Why and Have a North Star. Now, point number 2 in your workbook, ask the question, what do you want the attendee to remember about your company after they've visited your exhibit on the trade show floor? Now, us as an exhibit house, we ask these questions to our future clients, and we hear a myriad of responses. And most likely, any one exhibitor gives us a list of things that they want the attendee to remember about them on the trade show floor. Now, we all know, as marketers in the events and trade show industry, there are so many sensory experiences happening. There are tons of graphics on the trade show floor, tons of people vying for our attention through sound and light, and just the general activity of all of the people in one space. So we recommend to get consensus on one key message, one key point. We know now through research that has been done through neurotracker.net that the average person's attention span is only 8 seconds long. So if somebody will only remember something in their 8 seconds of memorable exposure to you and your brand, what do you want that one thing to be? So for this section, I recommend one book, and it's called The One Thing. Now, in this book, they talk about equality being a lie, and that those who have the power to zoom in on one particular piece of their message or one particular piece of their plan are exponentially more likely to hit their goal. So as we mentioned earlier, get consensus on one message and align everything you do to hit that message home. So for question number 3, we talk about the 3 phases of trade show marketing. The first phase being pre-show, the second phase being the show, and the third being post-show. Now, we believe that if you plan well all 3 of these phases, you will have exponentially better ROI from your entire trade show experience. Speaking to the first phase of the trade show marketing experience, pre-show, I know that we are all privy to some pretty common practices. Things like digital and making sure that we are putting out content on our social platforms, tweeting, LinkedIn, and any other of those platforms that you use to market your business. Second, mailers. Now, I have a interesting stance on mailers because we all know what getting general mail feels like. Typically, a white envelope, nothing too interesting, tends to cause a little bit of stress when a pile of them land on our desk. But I think that there is an unleveraged opportunity with mailers. And so we like to create something called magic mailers. And so these are the mailers that if they were to land on somebody's desk, they evoke an emotion, something that's exciting. So when you put a pink envelope or a colored envelope or really interesting small box or small package, you have the ability in what is traditionally a very boring marketing medium, you have the ability to create some surprise and delight. So in addition to the traditional ways to pre-show market, I highly recommend considering something that will surprise and delight your prospects, like a magic mailer. So for phase 2 of the trade show marketing plan build out, I want to talk about the show specifically. Now, there are a few things that not many exhibitors do very well. One of them is engaging the attendee. Now, I'm going to speak to this particular piece in a couple more slides, but I want to draw attention to one piece of trade show marketing that is, I think, a missed opportunity. So it's the swag. Now, we all know when we have giveaways and promotional items, we tend to put our logos everywhere, thinking that we will create interesting recall with the attendee. What happens, and some of us may know, we receive a bag of goodies or a bag of swag, and things that tend to have lots of logos end up stuffed in a drawer or thrown away, possibly recycled or given to Goodwill. Now, the way to avoid that has been brought to my attention through a book called Giftology, and it forces the reader to rethink putting our logo on everything. Now, at Steelhead, we focus on one particular piece of our logo so that those who are using our items don't feel as if they are our walking billboard when they put on our hat or any of our company swag. So I highly recommend reading the book Giftology to help broaden your perspective on swag and promotional items. Lastly, I'd like to talk about the third phase of trade show marketing, which is post-show. Now, so sadly, we see exhibitors knock out of the park really great exhibiting experiences, and then post-show lack a plan for following up. Now, I'd like to recommend 2 books for this section. One is Top of Mind. Now, in this book, it's highlighted that trust plus consistency over a period of time equals opportunity. Now, What's recommended is that content is developed and continuously pushed out. And I know as marketers, developing content can seem very overwhelming, especially content continuously dripped over a period of time. Now, in this book, Top of Mind, they highlight lots of ways to hear from voices throughout the entire organization. So I highly recommend incorporating that book into your reading material. And the second book that I would like to recommend is Crush It by Gary Vee. Now, I've had the privilege of meeting him in person, and he truly is a modern day marketer. And in this book, he talks about ways to leverage all of your content in various formats to extend your reach. So creating that human-to-human relationship on the trade show floor, and then pushing out content to continuously build the relationship with your prospects is something that he highlights in a really inspirational way in his book, Crush It. Also, I really recommend reading this book in its entirety.
And now in talking about your target audience, we move on to question 4. Who are you attracting and who's your perfect audience? With this in mind, we take a lesson from the fashion industry, and that is to design for one person, not a group of people. So the best way to identify who your perfect audience would be is to look back and find patterns in who you've worked with most successfully. Is there a particular demographic that keeps popping up over and over again in terms of either the gender, the age, the title they carry, etc.? Keeping that one person in mind that you work best with, think about what they think about. What are the problems they're looking to solve? How do they show up in all this action? When you can get into that kind of mindset, then you can really gear your messaging to be relevant for them and what they need to hear and see there on the show floor.
I want to talk about building a campaign theme. Now, from my perspective, this is one of the most fun components. It's where you can build in some connective tissue to put a personality to the logistics that are happening inside the exhibit. I recommend reading one book and then referencing it every single time you put together a campaign. And it's the book Fascinate. In this book, they talk about 7 triggers that pique human interest. Here they are right here. The first is lust. Wanting something, desiring something. Mystique, having intrigue or interest that's hidden just right below the surface. 3, alarm, needing to have something because you're fearing a consequence. Prestige, which is to be awarded something. Power, having domain over someone, something, or a system. Vice, little bit bad, still wanting it. Or trust, being a loyal advisor. Now, the way that you can use these items is in your messaging and in the activities associated with your trade show experience. So for instance, if you serve drinks during the day on the trade show floor, maybe you're reaching somebody from this vice perspective. Or if you have a campaign that warns people to stop doing something, you're meeting them at this alarm trigger. Now, there could be a point where you layer in multiple triggers that you are trying to engage throughout the entirety of a trade show experience, or throughout the 3 phases of marketing at a trade show. But it's to definitely take these things into consideration. They will add a lot of depth to what you're trying to create on the trade show floor. I want to point out just a few more items that can add some depth to your campaign development. I think naming your campaign can create a tie that binds your team and your suppliers around a particular theme for a year. Selecting fonts, grouping some images that help spark the emotion that you want at your exhibit. And then also picking some graphics that you think accurately represent what you're trying to create on the trade show floor. Having these things put together prior to going into development can really add a lot of context for everybody who's involved in your trade show program. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about the logistics inside your exhibit. We want to be thinking from a very big picture perspective here. Defining these different components will make the design and functionality within your exhibit environment make a lot more sense. So I'd like to draw some attention to these three words: see, do, and feel. So when you think about from the perspective of the attendee, what do you want them to see? Consider monitors, messaging, educational components, people, the whole look and feel from the aisle all the way in. What do you want them to do? Once they enter your exhibit, how do you want them to participate inside your environment? And then lastly, when they experience your company and your brand on the trade show floor, how do you want them to feel? Diving into these three components will be great idea food for your entire team, both internally and externally. Okay, so when we're thinking about how the attendee and the prospect is going to engage inside your exhibit space, I recommend considering the senses. Yes, all 5 of the general senses. Now, the more senses that you can craft an experience around, the more likely your experience and your trade show campaign will be memorable. Let me say that again. So the more senses you can engage, the more memorable the experience will be for the attendee. So consider all of the senses. For example, just a couple, consider coffee. If you serve coffee, the attendee is having a touch sense exposure, smell sense, and taste. So if you think about how to tie that in, how to tie the senses and those experiences into the campaign theme, into the messaging. Another example I've seen on the trade show floor, somebody wanted to communicate their global capabilities. And as part of their census plan, they served chocolate from all of the different locations where their companies had headquarters. So it was to take the census experience and tie it into their campaign theme.
And now in terms of marketing messages, let's consider how to attract the right kinds of attendees. There's really 3 categories we should keep in mind: the lookers, the seekers, and the explorers. This represents both their behavior on the show floor and where they are in terms of identifying a problem and how ready they are to solve it. So if we look at the lookers, for example, these are the ones that generally are just sort of floating about in the hall there on the show floor. They're not necessarily engaging, and generally speaking, they haven't identified the problem yet that they're looking to solve on the show floor. So the best that you could hope for in this case is brand awareness. So really focus on your hanging sign in that case, or whatever you're doing to get your brand logo out there, so that later when they are ready to identify and solve a problem, your name will be top of mind for them. Now we go a bit deeper. For those that have identified a problem and are looking to gather some more information, we find the seekers. The seekers are really the leads that you have to nurture. These are the ones that are going to come a little deeper into your booth. They may get a little more engaged, so you want to have a way to connect with them there. Perhaps it's a product demo or some interesting infographics or something like that. These are the ones that want to be nurtured. They need to gain some more information before they're ready to really make the decision on what they want to do to solve the problem they've identified. And then lastly, we have those who have identified what the problem is they want to solve and are there on the show floor specifically to find the solution for it. Those are the explorers. The explorers will do a deep dive into your booth. They want to be able to see the granular information that you've prepared for them so that they're ready to pull the trigger on the solution that they can identify there on the show floor. So make sure you're ready for them. Putting all this together, there are 3 categories to keep in mind. The lookers, who aren't very engaged, the seekers, who are leads to nurture, and the explorers, who are ready to do a deep dive from the get-go. So layer your messaging on those 3 levels so that you'll be able to meet them where they show up. And now let's talk about communicating capabilities. Keep in mind the learning pyramid as you're identifying your 3 different levels of how you're going to connect with the lookers, the seekers, and the explorers. For those that are at the looker level, you're not going to get a ton of engagement from them, and therefore they're not going to learn a ton. This is why you should focus just on brand awareness and trying to get top of mind with them. You'll find them at the top of the learning pyramid. But for those that are the seekers and the explorers, you'll be able to expect much more engagement out of them. So be ready to meet them on that level. There you'll see through demonstration and getting people actively involved in learning and participating in a discussion that they will learn substantially more, and that moves them down toward the bottom of the learning pyramid. Try to keep this in mind, where their headspace will be and at what level you should plan to connect with them on the show floor.
So when you think about your booth design, all right, I like to equate it to developing your own brand architecture for yourself, right? So if you were working with an architect to build your own home, right, your own personal brand statement, you need to align yourself with that kind of thinking when building and designing a booth for your brand. So you have to ask yourself, what does your brand stand for, right? What are the keywords that would describe your brand, right? Key attributes that would, again, articulate who you are as a company. And what does it look like and what does it feel like? And the most important thing in all of that is, what do you want your customer to walk away with? What kind of feeling do you want your customer to walk away with? You certainly want to create a brand presence that is significant and important, right? But perfectly aligned with your brand culture, with your offerings, and as important, as I said already, in alignment with what your customer is looking for and how they will connect with you on an emotional level. So those are some of the things that I look at when creating a booth design for my customers. So when we're talking about booth functionality, right, I like to look above and beyond the physical requirements of the booth. Certainly those are important things, how many counters, et cetera, et cetera. But the most important thing is really the function and how you're going to drive great engagement inside the booth itself. We have this amazing advantage when people come to the show floor. It's called psychological distance, right? What is that? Well, psychological distance is really embedded in our DNA. If you think about caveman, cavewoman, when they left their cave, they had to become very, very hyper aware of the world around them so they didn't get eaten by a tiger or worse, right? Well, the reality is it is still in our DNA to be very hyper aware when we leave our home base, whether that be our office or otherwise. Now, how does that possibly relate to booth functionality? The reality is that our customers are coming to us expecting much, much more. So we have to give them more, right? We have to think about what kind of journey it is that they want to experience when they come inside our space, when they participate with our brand. So it's really important that we look at all kinds of influencers for our customer today. And if you think about one of the number one influencers for our customer today, it's what we call the new retail, right? And the new retail is all about experience design and making sure that embedded into the function of the booth space itself, right, we're giving them great experiences. So above and beyond how many counters, how many storage units you need and how much ID you need, we need to make sure that we're creating a magical experience. Not unlike any entertainment element that you see today, whether it be in a engagement park or great retail. We have to be thinking about these things when we're creating a booth journey, because we certainly want to give them something quite magical. We certainly want to surprise and delight them along the way. And that way they will invest in us and our brand and spend more time with us. So when we look at booth functionality, it's much, much more than the physical attributes. It's everything around that. It's this magical journey that we have a responsibility to create. So when we're looking at booth messaging, right, there are a lot of things that we certainly have to consider. Hierarchy of messaging is absolutely key. Tier 1 all the way down to, the profile of our customers and making sure that they're seeing themselves in the space today. But above and beyond that, we have to look at what's going on in the world around us, right? We are surrounded by rich media. So the importance of creating, opportunities for rich media inside our space, no matter what tier of messaging it is, whether it's high ID or all the way down to our product offerings, it's important to provide our customers with a delivery mechanism and a connection mechanism that is in alignment with what's going on in the world, and that is rich media, right? So we have to make sure that we're including that as a part of the solutions wherever possible. It is our customers' expectation. Static graphics, as we know, advertising is out the window as we've known it in the past. So we have to look to the future and what our customers' expectations are. They spend a lot of time in rich media. So when they come to us inside the booth space, inside the show hall itself, they are expecting wonderful engagement opportunities in terms of the messaging that we deliver to them. So it's really amazing to me. I go to any show today and I take a look at some of the screens and I see everywhere that fill a space. Every one of them have fingerprints on it. No matter whether or not it's a touchscreen or not, the expectation for our customer is to engage, to participate. They want to own the experience. We need to make sure that we give that to them.
Okay, so we have gotten to the point where we've covered the campaign, the theme, the pre-show, show, post-show, the booth itself. Now we want to talk about staffing your booth. We have included a checklist of some vital components that we suggest you think about and plan for in reference to your booth staffing plan. Things like who will work the booth and what will their schedule be. Additionally, I think it's really important to communicate your vision for how you see the event going down, just to create alignment. So you'll see in the deck, which is downloadable, that we've included about 10 points here for you to consider. So in your workbook, you will see an asterisk asking you to reference the checklist, which is here for your consideration. I hope this is helpful. So you'll see point 13 in your workbook speaks to staff attire. Now, from my experience in all of the trade shows that I've seen executed, I think this one is sometimes a missed opportunity. So many of us have heard of the term guerrilla marketing. I think the attire of your booth staff can be considered a guerrilla marketing opportunity. Guerrilla marketing is defined as a strategy to market your service or products in a unique and unsuspecting way. So if you think about what your team wears as an opportunity to extend your marketing message out in the trade show hall, in the convention center, all around your booth, it really does extend the opportunity to add more to the campaign and your brand. Trade show goals. I believe that there is an opportunity to create 2 sets of metrics for trade show success. Now, our experience as an exhibit house tends to be with our clients, the goals being qualitative, very, very specific in reference to sales or meetings booked. I think those are really wonderful and very important goals. However, frequently missed are the marketing goals. How do you know when your marketing team has done a good job trade show marketing team has done a good job executing the trade show in itself. So I urge everybody to consider breaking up the marketing objectives from the sales objectives. So things like how many demos were given, how many people walked through the exhibit, how many pieces of promotional material were given away, how many people sat in the theater to experience the actual exhibit itself. All very different from what's more controlled frequently by the sales team. Things like meetings after booked or sales sold from the trade show floor. So having a combination of both creates a really comprehensive picture on how successful your trade show program really was. As we move to the end of our trade show planning and creative brief outline, I highly recommend when setting goals, whether they be for the marketing team or whether they be for the sales team, that you build them in a way where it's very clear whether or not they've been achieved. Many people are familiar with a system called SMART goal setting, and the letters in the word SMART stand for specific. Are the goals very clearly defined? Measurable. Can you measure them? Calculating the numbers very specifically for success or not. Achievable. Are they realistic given what you're doing on the trade show floor? Are they relevant to the future success of what you're trying to achieve? And lastly, are they time-bound? So to use this very simple acronym to help build a set of goals so that it's clear for the entire team when success has been hit. For the very last section of your workbook, number 15 speaks to vendor selection. Now, I think historically, many people will only consider the capabilities of the vendors that they work with. But as we all know, as event and trade show producers, the amount of time you have to spend engaging with your suppliers in order to pull off these trade shows extends into the many months timeline. I highly recommend that as much as you consider what the capabilities are of your vendors, that you also consider how they are as humans and how they will show up as an extension of your planning team. We have created a blog speaking to some best practices around RFPing out. We have it linked in your handout, so please feel free to check it out. So I'd like to just take a couple minutes and thank everybody for sticking with us as we covered the 15 necessary points to create a creative brief that will wow and create alignment. I hope throughout the last 45 minutes that you've been able to take away a few nuggets that will help elevate your game on the trade show floor. If you have any questions regarding what we do as a service provider or the information that we've shared, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Following, there will be a slide with all of our contact information. Thank you very much.